Hey y'all, I'm Allison Asarch from Nashville, Tennessee.
Hey, I'm Sean Fraser from the Ritzy Kids.
Hunters, this is Johnny from Rail Motor.
Hey, it's Shane from Blind Season.
Hey, it's Rob Stanier, and you can check out my music on all the streaming platforms.
Check out my latest music on all the streaming sites.
Check out my debut album on all streaming platforms.
Check out our new debut album.
Check us out on Spotify and Apple Music. And you're listening to our friends, Braggy and Curly.
And my favorite bands from Australia.
My two favourite podcasters,
Braggy and Curly.
Braggy and Curly.
On the
Unfiltered and Undiscovered podcast.
And Rossi.
Right, shall we get started?
Yes.
All right. Hey there, everyone. It's Curly here. It's Curly here, and it's episode 166 of the Unfiltered and Undiscovered podcast. I think my two co-hosts are looking forward to tonight's show, which we'll share with you in just a sec. But how are you, boys? We've got Braggy from Adelaide. We've got Rossi from Sydney. How was your weekend? And I guess, what did you think of the game?
I think Penrith were always a lock. They're just too good a side. Too good a side, Penrith, I think. Ivan Cleary and Nathan Cleary are incredible.
Yeah. I'm just hoping I've lost the kiss of death tag.
No, I thought you.
I did pick Penrith.
Are you sure? Oh, yeah, you did too, because you were secretly going for the Storm.
Yeah, of course.
Queenslanders
in there.
And
the mock knew. Couldn't trick the mock.
I just think, I think it's just amazing that they can win 4 fucking premierships in a row.
Yeah.
It's insane.
And they're a great side. But I think the game itself, and I mentioned this off air, it's just we should be celebrating a truly great side 4 in a row, and a lot of the focus on media and social media was all about decisions and the bunker, and I hate our game for that reason. We just create controversy for the sake of controversy.
Yeah.
Sure, Braggy, they won 4 in a row, but did you know St George won 11 in a row?
I didn't know that. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
when they were the richest club in Australia.
Yeah.
They had to change the rules.
Yeah.
They changed the rules.
Well, that's always a sign of a great team, isn't it? That's what they did with Don Bradman. They had to change the rules.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
I park out the front of one of the grounds Don Bradman played at regularly every day.
Okay.
Hurstville Oval.
Oh yeah.
Because he lived in Penshurst for a while.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I live near where he played in Adelaide at Kensington Oval.
Yeah.
I was listening to some podcasts during the week, and the Red V podcast is still going on, even though it's off season. And they do a birthday of a former rugby league player.
Mm-hmm.
And I've always found this interesting. Ray Lindwall, the great Australian fast bowler, used to. No, not Lindwall. Who was the
Lindwall was a fast bowler.
Yeah,
it was.
Lindrum was the
snooker player.
Yeah. So Ray played 11 games for the Dragons and then made a decision to concentrate on cricket. So
he must have lived in the area then.
In
those days you had to.
You had to. So very, very interesting.
Those days are gone, aren't they? Where you had guys playing cricket for Australia and AFL.
Yeah.
Sort of thing,
I think I told you my story that I used to live in a house on the other side of the railway line, so I could play in the St George comp.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it was about 8 or 10 kids registered at the one house. One of the officials of the club.
I love it.
And I'll tell you what, I wasn't worth signing.
You just must have been mates with the best players or something.
Yes, probably. Yeah. That's right. I don't think it's very far from the truth.
All right, so well done to Penrith, but let's talk about what we're doing tonight. Braggy, I'm going to hand it over to you, mate.
Thanks, Curly. A couple of weeks ago, we did I think our 5 favourite albums each, which is a whole other ball game to what we're trying to talk about tonight. We're going to talk about what we think are the 5 most influential albums. And Curly, just before we come on, asked me what makes an album influential. And I said, and I'm going to get Rossi to see if I'm on the right track. I think it's who you miss out if the album is not made. If the album's made and then who comes after, you know, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So some albums aren't made, then you don't get some other bands because, you know, or maybe you do, but maybe it's a bit further down the track and not as early. So I'm not sure.
Well, it's like that film Yesterday when they're going in, they go looking for they're going for because that was all about Beatles songs.
Yes,
and then they go looking for Oasis. They don't exist. Oh yeah,
that's right. Yeah, it's true. Well, so many people wouldn't exist, you know.
Oh well, Cheap Trick wouldn't be there.
Well, there you go. I mean, and it's very hard to pick who wouldn't exist because, but that's the way I'm looking at it, and that's why at the end of each of the things the albums I've picked, I've kind of tried to pick out who I think there would be, you know, if this album hadn't been made.
Yeah.
So
I get that, but I also think it obviously it's who that inspires to as you were talking about. But I think there's also a little bit of a cultural shift as well.
Yeah, it's bigger than just the bands. Yes.
Yeah.
So I was looking at albums that had, because these aren't necessarily my favorite albums, but they're ones that I think are culturally, politically, and historically significant records.
I agree.
And like their impact as a creative work on the world at large is kind of what I was thinking about.
I totally agree, and I agree with you. I think out of the 5 I've picked, there's only one I really would listen to often. I have listened to all of them, but some less than others. So yeah,
but every record I looked at has got like, I was like going, okay, it's this one, but it could be this one, and it could be this one, and it could be this one, and it could be that one. Like there's a spot, and I chose those records because I think that that's the one that had the impact broader, not necessarily just with me. But I could be wrong too.
Yeah, but there's no science to this. It's just it's personal preference. So
yeah. What about you, Curly? What were you looking for?
Yeah.
I was looking for albums when I was, 5 influential albums. Just trying to think about one of the things that stood out for me was musically innovative. Right, so the album itself was, different potentially from what the band had put out in the past, or how it shaped, or how it then started to mold. And that's especially true and relevant with one of the ones that I chose. Well, actually 2. One's a debut. Well, actually 2 are debut albums. So, and both of those albums just sort of, when they were launched, blew me away. Just you sort of listened to it and said, "Wow!" And I guess when it comes to that, for me, it was about that musical innovation. Some of the lyrics stood out as well, I guess, for me, and how long the longevity of the album was also something that I thought about. How relevant is it still today? And
the enduring legacy.
Good point. Yeah. Some albums are still influencing people. The next generation pick them up from their parents, and they
some albums get better as you listen to them a generation on too.
Yeah, right? Absolutely. And one of those albums, Rossi, I don't know if you've seen it, but I've been doing some Facebook posts on our Unfiltered, Undiscovered Facebook page around influential albums, and I've been using my good friend, I call it Chatty, but it's ChatGTP, which is the AI. And I've been asking it questions, and the question I asked it is, why was the Psychotic Turnbuckles Destroy Doll City an influential EP? So that's now up and posted on our Facebook.
I missed that one. I've got to go have a look at me. I missed that one.
I saw that one. I saw that, and like, yeah.
I was half
it's-
expecting ChatGPT to say it isn't.
Who? Oh, look, though, there was a garage rock revival. It pops up every 10, 15 years, and that was just
Yeah.
one of them.
Absolutely.
Someone, if someone ever got the compilation album Nuggets, you know where it all came from.
Oh yeah. But garage is like metal a bit, isn't it? It never goes away.
It is. Never goes away. That's
away.
right. Just
100%.
let me listen to a Hives album any day.
Yeah, there's a pub somewhere in a big city that's got fucking garage music. You know.
Yeah, I agree.
Live every all the time.
All right. So,
How we
Braggy,
doing?
who wants to go first, mate?
Do you want me to go first? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, you kick off into the
yeah,
breeze, and me and Curly will run at you.
Yeah. How's
Okay.
that?
Fuck, I didn't want to bat on this wicket. You're in the wrong season, boys. We're in a different season now. Like it looks a bit fucking wet. Okay.
I'm going to dig in short. I'm going to dig one in short then.
Yeah. Number one, I'm picking my first album I pick is the Velvet Underground. Nico and the Velvet Underground, a band that came out of New York in the 60s.
Yep.
One thing that's amazing, first of all, about this album is that it came out, especially if you listen to the other album I'm going to talk about, it came out 2 months before the Beatles' Sgt. Pepper. Okay?
Yeah.
So the Beatles are going in one direction, like more and more complex, more and more stuff, and these guys are just ripping it all apart.
Stripping it back.
It's probably the first art pop or art rock album ever made, I would think. It's the first time really it's got those druggy sort of ballad songs, and the voice is manipulated a little bit, which is kind of strange for that time as well. It's got a young Lou Reed, singing about trying to find the dealer, and
he worked in like the Brillo building, which is like he worked as a in Penn Alley songwriter, and so like they'd come and say, "All right, Lou, surf songs are big this week. Write a surf song," and that's what he did. That's how he cut his teeth, right?
Yeah. Wow.
But Warhol's influence on that was massive too, right?
Well, that's the other thing. Even the album art on this is
the banana.
The banana is no one. Well, why are you putting the fucking banana? Why isn't the picture of the band on there?
But that's Warhol. That's Warhol's influence, right?
That's right. And so, if you listen, the first song is Sunday Morning, which is beautiful.
Oh, what
glorious
a song!
Perfect
song.
Perfect song. There's a couple other ones that have got, I can't remember the name. There's another one that's got like this drone instrument. I think it's one of those Irish things that you turn and it makes a drone, which no one had ever done that before. And so without this album, you got to remember it comes out in early '67, 2 months before Sgt. Pepper's. So I'm thinking without this, there's no Bowie.
Yeah, absolutely.
Would you agree with that, Rossi?
There's no Bowie. Discussion. Yeah, I was having that discussion earlier on today myself, actually, for the very same reason. That without what makes an album influential, and without that, and it's exactly what you're talking about. Who doesn't exist if it didn't come out? And like that whole Velvet Underground sound, that whole
Smiths, even the Smiths. There's no kind
birthday
of that
birthday party have got
birthday party.
I know the Tribesmen have got influences. Birdman got Lou Reed influences, that sort of thing. Mick used to do a superb cover of "Can't Stand It," and I just love that song.
Wow.
And but that's it. Like that. You're right. You're absolutely right. The Velvet Underground. That's one of the albums, and the whole New York thing came off the back of it. And so when you go down at CBGBs and all that stuff through there, that is the natural bloodline, I think, of that.
Yeah, fair enough. So it's almost, even though it's not like, made by themselves, like punk was. It wasn't really do it yourself, was it? I don't think.
Well, there was a bit of that ethos in there, wasn't there?
There was.
So.
Yeah.
But it's people writing their own songs, which wasn't totally common at the time.
That's right. And they're not that great of musicians. That's the other thing.
No.
They're definitely not as accomplished musicians as the Beatles are.
Yeah.
But I feel like listening to Sunday Morning now. I just love that song.
I put it
Sometimes
on
I'm in the
today
car.
in the car. Yeah.
It comes in the car and it's a sunny day, and you just go, "Oh, what a work of art is this?"
Yeah, or if you're in traffic, it's just like all of a sudden you're calm. It's like I don't give
It disappears. Yeah, that's right. It's a really good. It could be the
Check
heroin
out-
in the song.
Yeah, it's drug, which is like a Stonesy sort of some of that Stone
Oh
stuff
yeah,
from the 70s is really
What a
So that's
good
what
call.
are we going taking turns, or am I going through all my five?
I'm just going to add something because while you
Yeah.
were doing that, I was having a little chat with Chatty.
Good.
And Chatty's talked about the Sex Pistols, Joy Division, Sonic Youth,
Joy Division,
R.E.M.,
definitely,
and the Strokes have all cited this album as a key influence.
Absolutely,
There you go.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Stooges as well.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, let's do one album each, Braggy,
Okay.
and rotate round. So I'll go next if that's all right.
Yep.
Sure.
So the album I want to that is probably one of my favorite albums as well. Is London Calling by the Clash.
With one of the best covers of a record you'll ever get in a million years.
Absolutely. And double album, and I've been listening to this album pretty much nonstop again over the weekend, and it still just blows me away, all these different musical styles in the album itself. Like it was released in 79, so punk's still going like strong, and this is a vastly different album to anything that preceded it. But you're looking that it sort of had punk, it had that rough guitar, but it was also reggae, ska, rockabilly, jazz is in there, R&B,
it's London. It's London of the era. Like that. That's a melting pot of the culture,
Yeah,
and there's another thing, Scott. What's the last song? Oh, you stare by
your man. Yeah,
that is a fucking dance number, man. I love dancing around to that song.
Yeah, that was
It's an album. It is an album of
monster. It's a monster.
Yeah. But
just that rainy footage of the clip, and it's like just so. I remember vividly seeing that as a kid for the first time. And just like these guys have got it going on.
And the bass like boom, boom, you know you're in for something, hey?
Oh yeah. But it's a snarling. It's a snarling.
It's angry bass, isn't it?
Yeah.
But I remember listening to it for the very first time, and you put on London, you put on side one, album one, side one, and it starts with London Calling, of course, and you're going, yep, I've heard that on Countdown. That's a pretty cool song. And then Brand New Cadillac, and
fuck, I'm coming back.
You've still got the guitars happening, and it's still like a pretty rock song.
It's
and
rock
then
and
all
roll.
of a sudden, Jimmy Jazz just comes on, and you go, "Hey, what's going on here?"
Yeah,
and it's your first hint, really, of what the full album's about. And then you flip it on to side two, and you've got Spanish Bombs and Lost in the Supermarket. But then, of course, you've got the Guns of Brixton, which is it's a darker song.
Gonna go.
Yeah, and of course the Clampdown is just still it's got one of the best lines with the Clampdown. I used to listen to this on the way to work when I first started working with Kmart. And there's a line in it that says, and you come up, you grow up and you come down and start working for the Clampdown. You start wearing blue and brown and working for. And I look down, I've got my brown pants on, I've got my tan shirt on, I've got my brown tie on. I'm going. And so it used to be just a real classic, and just a real contradiction. Then you go on to side three. Wrong and Boyo, and then Death or Glory. It's just truly, he who fucks nuns will later join the church. Just a classic line. And then we just it sort of winds down, doesn't it? In side 4, but every side just had this. It's almost like a kaleidoscope of musical styles just sort of thrown in there, and it's just an amazing song, an amazing album. Just love it.
Yeah.
You talk about the ska and stuff and the thing, and it's got that, like, you see it's policey in some of the songs, or even,
Yeah.
Little
But
bit of.
But that whole culture of the rude boys around London and the dope smoking and the reggae parties and all that sort of stuff is really like, there was that cross pollination and that juxtaposition with that all those like punk and ska and reggae were all kind of very closely interrelated all the time.
That's right, and there's there was the first time that there was black and white guys in these bands and stuff, and that's because they were all getting, like, Thatcher was fucking them all in the ass.
Yeah, they're all angry as hell. Angry as hell.
And so they were all together in the same fucking boat.
And the lyrics represent that of the time as well. You know, that political angst, and they still wrote about such hard-hitting political statements, but in just a different style to what they had been doing within the punk era. And you know, it really just. I think it shifted punk. You know, all of a sudden it started to give, and other bands I suppose almost permission to go out and experiment. And maybe this was a little bit of part of the reason why Paul Weller went the way he did and took the jam into his last album. So
that 79's the dawn of post-punk too, right?
Yeah.
So look, all those, and it's kind of that jumping off point in a way. You're right. I think.
Into new wave. You know,
and
it's a good choice. It's a fucking great choice.
Very good call. Good call, Curly. I like that one. Yeah, my first record today.
Yeah,
and I did my history. I've been looking at my history lessons, and like I was saying earlier on, that it's not necessarily about what I think is a great album or that, but its impact and what it did. And given that, vinyl albums didn't come around until the 40s, they didn't really take off. It wasn't until the 1950s, 1951, Elvis had his first record, all stuff, things like that.
Yep.
But for me, the number one rock and roll album that I'm going to play, the most influential one, I think, is Here Comes Little Richard. Little Richard is the man. He is rock and roll personified. It doesn't matter. Whoever it is, they're all just jumping off of Little Richard. You listen to a Beatles track and you hear, woo! Where's that come from? That's the Beatles doing Little Richard, right? Yeah. Any album that has, Tutti Frutti, Long Tall Sally, Rip It Up, like, come on. Like, he's
almost every genre, mate. He's punk. He's almost every fucking genre.
Who copped him? Like, Prince copped his look entirely. Prince copped him. And Little Richard played piano, Jerry Lee, because Jerry Lee was a great piano player. I love Jerry Lee, and I love Elvis, and I love all that stuff. I know that all of this stuff's so closely related and linked, but I think Little Richard's the man. Mate, and so he had a political impact,
he's a gay black man living in the South.
I know. What a person. You know that his big change in life happened in Sydney?
Did it? No.
That he was at a boat in Sydney Harbour, and he had a religious epiphany, and he tore all of his rings off and everything and threw them out the boat, and he became a farmer. Yeah, but man,
but he changed back a couple of times, didn't he?
Oh, of course he did. Yeah, I think he's been changing back all the time. But that's but I just like one of my favorite modern bands who were influenced by him, like beyond belief. And when I say modern, I mean 30, 40 years old. But like Living Colour,
yes,
no Living Colour without Little Richard, and Little Richard appeared on one of their records rapping.
Well, mate, you could be right. You could virtually say there's nothing without Little Richard. You could almost say that.
Look, I'm sure there are other people doing it, right? And there's parallels. And you take someone out, someone else is going to fill the space, maybe, But Little Richard, man, listen to the energy and the excitement in his playing, and he's a gay black man. And segregation and things like that, he kind of just ripped a hole in it,
Yeah,
he ripped a hole
he
in it.
certainly tore down some barriers, didn't he? And you've
Yeah.
got a sort of very flamboyant, as Braggy keeps saying.
Oh,
But you think about, you've mentioned Prince, but you think about David Bowie, you think about
Mike Bolan.
Elton John.
Yeah.
Would they have been the artists that they were if someone like
Without Little Richard?
Yeah,
yeah,
I
you
don't
can
know.
almost
I
make
don't
an
know.
argument for him being the most influenced album. There's a I don't know who said it, but someone said once when they were asked about what's the difference between pop music and rock music, and they said, well, with rock and roll, you might just get fucked. You know what I mean? It's dangerous. It's dangerous.
Yeah.
True
Little
rock
Richard
and
was
roll.
dangerous.
Yeah.
Little Richard was dangerous, man. Little Richard was like, I just you watch a clip and like Muhammad Ali's took his arrogance, right?
Yeah.
That whole arrogance. Like, I'm the man.
He's one of his biggest fans too.
Yeah, exactly. Like, and what a cultural icon Muhammad Ali was. So, at the time, the most recognized face on the planet.
There's a little bit of his danger, boys, in punk music. There's a little bit of his danger in AC/DC. There's a little bit of his danger in metal, in freaking gangster rap. There's a little bit of that.
AC/DC will tell you Little Richard's a big thing for them, right?
Massive.
Big thing for them. And I love him. I just, it makes me happy just to hear you guys saying, yeah, we love Little Richard too, right?
Yeah.
I've
got that album.
It's my number one most influential record at the moment. And it could change tomorrow.
Yeah, absolutely. All right,
Okay.
Braggy, number 2.
I'm going to go with, in 1961, there was we're going to go back to the late 20s and the 30s and the 40s with an old blues guy called Robert Johnson, who only ever recorded 29 songs.
Yep.
And someone, I don't remember who it was, but some label got all these recordings together. I think it might have been.
It may have been the historic, but it may have been the historic. It may have been like Leadbelly did with the archives.
Anyway, they got all these recordings together, all 29 of them. They put them on an album in 1961, and they put it out. Now, in 1961 in England, you've got a young Eric Clapton. Stones. You've got a young Jeff Beck. You've got a young Jimmy Page. And if they don't hear that album, I'm not sure if there's fucking Led Zeppelin or there's any of that sort of shit.
Yeah.
Because that goes way back. And I can't believe that a song like Sweet Home Chicago was written in, I think it's 1929. Is that right? Or 1930.
I agree.
Yeah.
Insane.
Like the guy I learned, when I was a kid, I went to a guitar player, and this is it was his sweet spot. And I didn't know what I had, but this guy was a gun. I think I told you about it. He's the guy who gave Robert Seuss from the Hypnotics his first harmonica, right?
Oh, okay.
So this guy was playing me Robert Johnson and Little Walter and all of that stuff, and I'm like, I didn't quite get it until much, 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 much later.
Yeah,
but I'd go and see this guy playing, and he'd just be playing in a pub with a slide and a microphone and doing all that Robert Johnson stuff.
Yeah.
So, and it was really complex at the time. But you've heard the story about the speed adjusted Robert Johnson.
Yes, and I've listened to it.
And it makes more sense when you speed adjust it back to standard concert tuning. All of a sudden, it sounds different. But the songs are the songs, aren't they?
That's right. But explain that to Curly and the listeners, that the speed adjustment thing.
Okay, that when you record anything on tape, the tape has to play at a certain speed, and when you play it back, you play it at the same speed. It sounds like it does. But there's a view that there was a disparity, and the tape that ended up being released as recordings was sped up, therefore changing the tone, the pitch, the timbre, and the speed of the recording. So some musicologists got the original recordings and adjusted them backwards so that the songs were in standard guitar tuning like E. And then all of a sudden, there's an entirely different nature to the songs, right? It's
Of
a
course.
really interesting historical artifact, and it's a pretty big debate. So you can look for it on YouTube. You'll see Speed Adjusted Robert Johnson and have a listen to it, and it's fascinating.
The other big influence from those recordings, and I don't know if I'm cheating because it's a compilation album of all the things that was recorded before and only really put on vinyl properly in 1961. But out of those 29 songs, I would say more than half of them he's singing about the devil, or he's singing about going to hell, and that, I mean, without that, I think maybe the Stones are the first guys, Sympathy for the Devil, to start doing that, and then that leads to metal. You know?
Well, the story is that he went missing, right?
Yeah, there's
And
the story.
he went missing, and he came back a much better guitar player. But the story, one of the stories is that he was on the run from someone's husband who was going to kill him.
Yeah,
and he just went into hiding and played guitar for a couple of years. That's one of the versions.
That's probably what happened. Yeah.
But can I say that when I was at university, I did a thesis for my cultural studies course, and it was actually on the origins of the Crossroads myth.
Right. Okay.
And so I deep dived into that tale like you wouldn't believe.
Oh, of course you would.
Have you seen that movie?
That I've seen the Crossroads movie with the young fella playing and Steve Vai.
It's like the Karate Kid for guitar players.
Yeah, that's the one. But the stories that he learnt to play by sitting on gravestones at night from some guy and shit like that. But
hey, it adds to the myth.
The other thing is, and you can see this if you look at pictures of him where there's only about 3 or 4 pictures, he's got the longest between this knuckle and this knuckle. It's ridiculous.
Yeah,
it's really weird fingers he's got. If you have a look at a picture of him, look it up, Curly.
Yeah.
But those songs are just iconic, and like without that, there wouldn't have been a Led Zeppelin album made.
No, exactly. It would have been
Led Zeppelin gone,
completely gone.
Yardbirds,
gone.
Eric Clapton, Jeff Beck, all those guys, all those English guys, and the Stones. Yep, absolutely, all of that stuff, and that's his influence.
They all covered him too. They all covered him.
Yeah.
So, from a guitar perspective, it's Eric Clapton, Dwayne Allman, Keith Richards with the slide guitar techniques.
The alternate tunings, the G tuning and the D tuning
but
stuff.
Braggy, with the concept of the devil, what's come up here is that there were stories of him making a pact with the devil at the crossroads to gain his extraordinary music talent.
And there's stories about the Stones with that as well, that they all signed a pact with the devil and
Jimmy Page used to buy up all of Aleister Crowley's old stuff, including his house.
That's right.
Yeah.
Wow.
And
Jimmy Page had a bad heroin problem and could have been a crazy drug addict. Just saying.
And how? I mean, if it's not true,
with too much money.
If none of this is true, how is Keith Richards still alive?
Yeah.
Well, I think whenever you think about big issues in the world today, we always wonder what sort of world are we going to leave for Keith Richards.
That's right. I love it. It's just going to be Keith and the cockroaches. Okay.
Right, so let's talk about my second one, and this one, once again, this is an album that came out in '85, and it sort of like it smacked me around the face when I first started hearing some of these songs. I'm talking about Psycho Candy by Jesus and the Mary Chain, and the reason why it just slapped me around the face is I have never ever heard a band use distortion and feedback as part of the musical journey that they were taking you on. So and behind the feedback and the distortion was, your traditional guitar, bass, drums, but it was just like it just hit you from all angles, that there was screeches and squelches and all this distortion. It was just incredible. It was walls of feedback and distortion, and behind it there was almost like you could almost describe it as like a pop sort of a tune coming along. So the first song I heard was a song called Just Like Honey, and that's a little bit slower paced. But the one that I really loved was the first song on side 2, which was Never Understand. And it is just a driving pop song engulfed in distortion and feedback. And like, wow. It was just one of those albums. And I reckon that there's a lot of bands that have cited this album as a particular influence. Smashing Pumpkins, right?
Yeah.
And you still hear that in some of the early Pumpkin stuff, that that whole concept of what Jesus and the Mary Chain. Now, it was sort of short-lived because their second album, I think, was Darklands, and it got a bit cleaner. But I know Psycho Candy was just, it melded noise and pop in a way that had never been done before. I think a couple of other bands probably tried to do the same sort of thing. It was maybe a short-lived influence, but, you know, it was really the first time.
Noise rock.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah.
I don't even know if there was a name given to the genre. It was just... Holy shit! What is this?
What's this? Yeah.
It's an art pop album too, wouldn't it be? I mean, I don't know the album that well, but
it's art rock. Therefore, it's got its ties back to the Velvet Underground. Really?
Well, I guess, yeah, but it's a bit more. Well, see, that's the thing. That's why you can't do it, because you can't take it back to one, because they just didn't listen to that album. They listened to things before, other things as well.
I think the music itself, it really drew back on the 60s sort of pop and surf rock to an extent.
It's garage, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. So and to blend that in with just this wall of noise that hits you when you tune into it, and once again, listened to it extensively over the weekend, and it just brought back all those initial... You don't realize how great an album is until you listen to the album again, and you go, that's it. I remember that. And I remember that reverb, distortion, feedback, Psycho Candy, Jesus and the Mary Chain, one of the most influential albums that I would recommend everyone get onto and have a listen to. So...
Another good pick, Curly. I think you sell yourself short sometimes.
Yeah. It's a ripper. It's an absolute ripper. So my second one, and I'm cheating, I'm kind of cutting Braggy's grass a bit here, is it could have been any Beatles album. It really could have been.
Okay, it's good. Well, because I can trump you after this.
Yeah, it could have been. It could have been the White Album. Because the White Album that album. The White Album did so many crazy things, like Abbey Road. It could have been, which was like the most perfectly crafted pop album almost of all time.
What's your favorite Beatles album? Is it this one?
My favorite, maybe this one. This might be my favorite as well as, but it's influence. And I've chosen Revolver by the Beatles. Could have been Rubber Soul, but it's when they really jumped into the studio, freed up their minds a bit with LSD. And started to really experiment in that studio space. Yeah, like some of the songs on this album are just mind-blowing. Like Good Day Sunshine, I'm Only Sleeping, Ella Marie, Taxman, like Here, There and Everywhere, which may be the greatest pop song ever written, right?
It's insane.
And Your Bird Can Sing. But what they were doing in this period was that they were using the studio as another instrument like no one ever did before, like backwards masking tracks and also like And Your Bird Can Sing. What a song. But Here, There and Everywhere is one of the most beautiful. And what was everyone else doing at the time? What were they? The Stones were still ripping off black guys. And
there was nothing, man, like this. There was nothing.
No,
so far in front.
And so, and it's, I think it's undeniable for all of us that the influence on the Beatles of that popular genre is, and it was an album. It was an album. Whereas, the ones before might have been a collection of singles. This and Rubber Soul were kind of their first albums.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which, and of course, the next album after that, Braggy, might have been Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band. What do you think?
Well, that's my choice, and I say it trumps it because they were really in the studio this time. I think Revolver, it's when they just finished touring. They were still kind of touring. And
it was the end of the era.
Yeah, and there's some songs on there, but we're not talking about influences here. So
can we just go back to Revolver for a sec? So
sure.
Because I know Braggy was just about to get on a roll.
No, that's fine.
But it's linking the Beach Boys' Pet Sounds would never have happened if it wasn't for Revolver.
Correct.
Yeah, that's right. And but there was a healthy rivalry, right? And like people talk about Pet Sounds, but there's probably 2 or 3 shit songs on it.
Yeah, more than that.
A couple of shit songs, but there's a couple of like mind-blowingly Godhead tracks as well. Right? But the Beatles were consistently better, consistently smarter, consistently more talented, better songwriters.
Yeah.
I
think the thing that lets Revolver down is there's a couple of tracks that are still that poppy. I don't know how to describe it. They're kind of that like maybe Taxman, although that's pretty good. Anyway,
that's pretty. That was George being angry about having to pay tax.
Yeah, it's hard for me
which is funny for a working class kid with millions of quids in the bank. Still thinks he's poor.
What the thing that Sgt. Pepper did, that I think Revolver maybe didn't quite do was it actually gave a watertight case to the fact that pop music was an art form.
Yeah,
and not just a bunch of, because it was pop music still then in those days was treated as kids fucking. It's not really art. It's not like classical music.
Yeah,
and that the Beatles went bullshit. Listen to this. We've got fucking all these things on. We've got, and it's got the same backward stuff on it. It's the first.
They
the first concept album.
Yeah, they took what they learnt in Revolver and applied it deeply into the concept style.
It's the first album that ever had the lyrics printed.
Yeah,
they're printed on the back of it, which is a massive influence.
And the Paul is dead rumor was really lent into with that album too.
Yeah, and the other mind blowing thing about this, Rossi, is that the Beatles were still, if it was Brian Epstein, I don't know who it was, but they were still loath to put the singles that they'd release on the albums because they thought it was going to rip people off because you bought the single, then you bought the album, and you got the same song again. So Penny Lane and Strawberry Fields, which
didn't make it
at the same time, weren't on the fucking album.
I know.
Insane.
But like that whole era of those songs through that era, like what? Like even Day Tripper and all that, Nowhere Man and all that stuff. Like, what's going on here?
And Penny Lane. I mean, it's not on the album, so I'm not even talking about. I guess I shouldn't even be talking about it. But that to me is one of the greatest pop songs ever written. If I can change his key, anyway.
Have you seen Paul McCartney go through Liverpool with James Corden?
Yes.
Yeah, fantastic. It's too much fun. And they they turn up and
they turn up at the pub. It's a bit fake, but they turn up at the pub.
It is. They turn up at the pub and they've got a curtain in front of them. Someone goes, put money in the jukebox, and the curtain has Paul McCartney and his live band playing in the pub. Right. And then they get on the phone. They start getting on the phone, and inside half an hour, the place is full of people. And some people are going, put more money in the jukebox, and the curtain opens again. They play another song. Yeah. Brilliant. Cheesy as. But McCartney's just such a charming bloke,
Yeah, I've liked him more. John was my favourite for ages, and then George. But I think I'm coming around to Paul. He's getting.
I'm a Paul guy. I am a really.
I should be a Paul guy because I'm a pop nut, but I don't know, something about John.
Yeah, and we could do other Beatles songs. We could do other Beatles albums. So Abbey Road's another contender. Their influence is undeniable. What do you reckon, Curly?
Yeah, I do. I'm agreeing with everything you're saying. Pop and psychedelic,
Yeah.
What does Chatty say?
Well, what it says, I'm going to read this out. Modern pop and indie music is linked by the Beatles' approach to production, songwriting, and genre fusion on Sgt. Pepper. It laid the groundwork for modern musicians to explore innovative and eclectic sounds. Artists like Radiohead, Arcade Fire, and Tame Impala own much of their creative freedom and exploration to the precedent set by Sgt. Pepper.
I guess you could say we talked about Little Richard before, how that like without Little Richard, there's nothing, right?
The
Beatles are influenced by Little Richard, and they take it to that level, and then after Sgt. Pepper comes out, everything is different again, and without that, everything else is.
So was it the first concept album?
Who knows? I think it would have been. I mean,
I think
maybe
it
someone.
would have been.
I can't think of one before that where they went, and it wasn't really. It's not like a Pink Floyd. It's not like Dark Side of the Moon. It wasn't really.
Yeah.
I don't think they thought every song through. I think they still had a bunch of songs and tried to make it fit.
Yeah.
I don't know.
It's loosely a concept album. Yeah.
It is loosely a concept album, much like Dark Side of the Moon is loosely a concept album.
I guess, yeah.
Yeah, but still.
But the trouble with the Beatles is that they're all of them are writers. Well, maybe not Ringo, but the three guys are writers, so it's never going to really flow, is it? Because it's all those ideas.
Yeah,
and George is doing his mystical sitar stuff on there as well.
Oh well, the backwards guitar stuff. It's like, how good's that?
Tape loops run and turn the radio on. Just let the tape run, and we'll turn the radio on. Then we'll change the channels, and we'll let that record.
Yeah,
so,
no one had been doing that, and like it was just,
avant-garde. It's avant-garde.
It's like artist development. They've allowed artists to develop to their fullest extent.
Yeah.
Instead of like knocking them off after one single. No, not good enough, mate. Next.
So I guess the question is, would we have seen The Wall by Pink Floyd or Tommy by The Who? Would we have seen those albums if it wasn't for Sgt. Pepper?
No, I don't think so.
No, I don't think so. The Who were doing parallel work with Lifehouse very early. They were doing their concept album Lifehouse, which never really kind of came to fruition, but they were working on that very, very early, to be fair.
Yeah.
And I think the Summer of Love and that Acid period might have thrown up other people doing that sort of collaborative long form art too. Could do. But who knows?
Yeah, that's right. We don't know.
All
Drugs.
Right.
Drugs.
Let's go on to something completely different. It's actually an album that both me and Rossi put into our top 5, and it's the Ramones. The Ramones.
Yeah.
Fuck yeah.
So
look.
Yeah. Just what is it?
You might as well talk about this together, you two.
Yeah. So I was just about to jump back on. Like I look at that, and then I think, okay, first punk album. Then I go Raw Power. N.W.A, Stooges. They go MC5, but really, punk. It's the Ramones. They're the Kings, number one. They beat the Pistols. They went to London. Everyone went and saw them. Yeah, I hate to admit it, but the Americans are the originators of punk.
Sharp.
And I've got the track listing in front of me. So it kicks off with Blitzkrieg Bop, 2 minutes 14. Beat on the Brat, 2:31. Judy is a Punk, 1:32. I Want to Be Your Boyfriend, 2:24. Chainsaw, 1:56. Now I Want to Sniff Some Glue, 1:36. I Don't Want to Go Down to the Basement, 2:35, which is the longest song on side 1. So 7 songs.
Love it. And that's a direct answer to all that prog rock that was going on.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
It was 14 minutes, one fucking song, one side.
All blokes who look identical. Yeah, like leather jackets, jeans, like the look, the standard look, everything about it. It's a throwback to a 1950s band though. Like, Phil Spector's influence and all that stuff too, right? And the boy group and stuff.
It's rock and roll.
But it's down at the heel and torn and tattered and fast and frenetic and exciting,
It's
like,
Little Richard.
Yeah. But like Curly, those songs are so much fun. Like even like Rocket to Russia, Ramones Leave Home. I just love those records. They're so much fun.
Yeah, no Green Day without that. It's pop punk, really.
And
Absolutely.
sometimes the lyrics sort of border on maybe some cringeworthy stuff. Havana Affair I'm thinking of, and there's not too many bands singing I Want to Sniff Some Glue, but yeah, I just thought simple, minimalistic, but boy, did it blow you away. And left you wanting more, than they weren't immediately successful commercially, but they paved the way for so many other bands, and the influence on punk itself is just huge, so unbelievable.
Being in New York as well, they're kind of in that freedom that Velvet Underground gave New York artists as well. Like that, they're from Queens, but like the whole CBGB's thing is part of the legacy that, firstly, Lou Reed and the Velvet Underground and the New York Dolls kind of poised on them, like the New York Dolls as well, who are kind of like that smacky sort of glam rock, sort of loosey goosey.
It was very dark and seedy glam rock, wasn't it?
Oh, it was really seedy. And so New York has got that line all the way from and everything's kind of linked if you look for it,
the music just it mirrors the dirty fucking streets,
grime,
Barry and
I've always wanted to create a Ramones cover band called the Tyrones, and they're all the band members would be Tyrone. Hi, I'm Tyrone. Hey, we're the Tyrones, and this is also Rockaway Beach.
1, 2, 3, 4.
I was just about to say one of the best count-in bands as well.
1, 2,
3, 4.
Hey ho!
Well, the Eastern Dark played every show they played. They played a Ramones cover to open their show, and it was chronological. They started their first show with track 1, side 1, and worked their way through.
Oh, truly, I didn't know.
Yeah, the Eastern Dark. That's what they did.
Very heavily influenced by the Ramones.
Oh, yeah, massively.
That's cool.
What a great album. Great choice, Curly. Great thinking, Curly.
Yeah, great minds think alike. So
yeah, there you go.
So Rossi, what's your next one?
Well, it was that, but that's why. Actually, now I'm jumping off another direction, right? And this is one from 1959.
Whoa.
1959.
Yeah.
And I listen to it a lot, and it's kind of jazz. It's a jazz album.
Yeah.
Oh,
and
I know the one it is.
Miles Davis, Kind of Blue.
Incredible.
And like you just listen to it, and like So What is just sublime. It's just musicianship. Like you think of John Coltrane, you think of Miles Davis. They're guys who are just on another level of playing and understanding. They but their political impact of just what they brought, their cultural value to the world is just undeniable. Like you listen to that album. There'd be no Steely Dan, there'd be no hundreds and thousands of jazz players, right? And poor jazz players, as you know, they've never had much money. I was doing a gig not long ago, and I saw 4 of them out the back sharing the one cigarette. They had no money. It was terrible.
That's an old one, right?
It is. But like you listen to that record, like just the playing, just everything. It's like a film noir record. You know,
it's a strange record, isn't it? I don't quite fully understand it, but
I don't either.
I know. It gives it. No, I know it's good. I know it's something to do with the way the way he played the chords and the way they followed the melody over those chords. I don't quite. I'm not a student of
Sublime.
a music student. Yeah, I don't
Sublime
know about
but just the emotion of it. It's there.
I've got it, and we often Yvette and I often play it. Yvette's a big jam. My wife is a big jazz fan. Not so much of that kind of whatever
bebop
that style is. Is it bebop though, or is it? Because isn't bebop more? It doesn't have as much of the playing in it. It's like they call it the birth of cool, didn't they?
Yeah, they did, and he was cool, man. And he lived rough. He lived a tough life too.
Yeah. Well, he was on the smack a lot, and
I know.
But you should. I don't know if that's one you should listen to, Curly. It's I'm not going to say it's a Sunday sesh album for you. I'm going to say it's a late at night. Freaking I've got a scotch and I'm sitting by myself.
Well, Chatty's talking about the modal jazz.
That's the part I don't quite
movement.
Get.
And this shift towards simplicity and space influenced jazz musos.
It's definitely one of the most influential jazz albums of all time.
And it's an album. That's why I'm leaning into a bit.
It's an album, but it's also, like you say, Rossi, it's so many rock guys will quote that album.
Yeah.
So that just opened up so many spaces in my brain.
And like just you listen to it and there's it's just sublime, mind blowing, and I'll never understand it fully.
No, you won't unless you're you come out of
one of them.
Yeah, one of those ones. It's interesting. It's interesting. Sorry, just to transgress a little bit. I'm involved in this little project here in LA with a mate of mine who I play with, Eugene, who's trying to put together this thing called a rock orchestra, which is like a cover band, but we've got brass and we've got strings. And he's really struggling to find string guys that can play without having the music there in front of them, because we need them to be able to move around the stage. So it has to be all memorized. And it's kind of really weird to think about, Rossi. Like, I think, but I don't understand. I've been doing that since I was fucking 16. I have to remember, because you have to go out and perform. You can't be looking at the thing. But I guess it's a different. Once you learn that way, I guess once you do have to read, then it becomes the.
I did do a gig today with these. The like all these session players came into one of the theaters today and played, and like the drummers, I know the drummer is the deal.
Mm-hmm.
And I was talking about some of the other guys in the band, and they were all the deal. I was just watching them warm up and play, and going, but they're all playing off charts, right?
Yeah.
And I'm watching the MD playing the keyboard, and they finished one song, and they like he's just like going, "Hang on, my arrangement must be different to yours." Going, right. Did you see that? And I'm like going, oh, wee, oh. But these guys were like playing. The drummer's just warming up with the drum beat from Rosanna, which is like, which is like it's
one of the hardest shuffles.
Bernard Purdy's top with John Bottom's "Fool in the Rain" foot, as played by Jeff Porcaro, right? And this drummer's playing, and I reckon I might have done a gig with this guy 30 years ago. Right? Like he's pretty well regarded. I'm watching this guy play, and he's bigger and fatter and sits down like it, but wow, like, and that's a different level of playing again. Those guys, and he doesn't need to hold. He has the charts, and he just goes, he's doing this stuff, and I'm like, no, okay, I don't know any drummers. That's what a drummer does. Yeah.
Okay, I'm going. It's my go.
Yeah, you'll go.
I'm going another direction too.
Yeah.
I'm going to go with a band called Kraftwerk, who came out of Germany.
Yes.
They grew up after the or probably during the war, after the
Yeah.
war, where there was freaking just nothing there in Germany. And they made a couple albums. I think this is the third album of theirs. The first one was called Autobahn.
I love
And
that.
these
I
guys
love
are the
that.
originators
Yeah.
of electronic music. So they
Yeah.
put themselves in this little bubble where they just it had to be electronic, and it had to be. It was more about science and philosophy than it was actually about
was.
entertainment.
I-
So
I think what's interesting about them is
Yeah.
that the early stages of that, there's no MIDI. They weren't using MIDI. They were actually playing.
No.
They were playing the instruments. They were playing electronic instruments in that sort of mode. And as
until
time
this
goes
album,
on, yeah,
until this album, because in this album, this is 77. So the first ones I think was 74 or 70.
yeah.
But this
Barn,
one,
barn, barn on the Autobahn.
yeah. But this one, they actually had a guy specially make a sequencer. There was early a sequencer, but could only replay a certain amount of notes. This one could play more than anything that had ever been made.
Pete Townsend had one. Pete Townsend had
the
it.
same
Yeah,
sort
yeah.
of thing.
Yeah,
That
yeah,
same
yeah,
sort of
yeah.
thing. But the other thing that made this one a little bit more influential is that they were in Berlin at the same time that Bowie and Iggy Pop were doing their Berlin thing.
Yeah.
And so
Right.
they met up with these guys apparently, and they were.
Is that low? Is that low era?
I think that's the time. Isn't that the
Yeah.
White Duke era, or just before the?
Yeah,
when he
thin
was
white,
really,
thin white heroin Duke.
Yeah, they're doing a lot of
Yeah.
shit. Him and
Yeah.
There's a lot of lost days in Berlin with Bowie.
There's a
and
real
Iggy Pop.
starkness in that stuff.
But this album, if you think about this and this electronic stuff, I mean, then you're going to rule out, freaking
Let's make a list.
techno,
New Order.
yeah,
Gary Newman.
New Order.
Pet Shop,
Gary
Depeche
Newman.
Mode.
Pet Shop Boys,
Yeah.
Everything.
Yeah.
Everything. Like
all the electronic stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, and like I get pilloried by a certain member of my family here for my love of Kraftwerk. I say they're massively influential, and he tells me that I'm wrong. Apparently,
Yeah. Daft Punk.
yeah,
Massively influential, but I don't really like it.
I do.
I'm sort of
really
with you.
do.
I understand the influence there, Braggy, but I was never a big Kraftwerk fan at all.
I dig it. I utterly dig it. Yeah, like no Devo without Kraftwerk.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, but Devo has still got a little bit of rock and roll in him.
Oh, they do. But it's the sounds. It's the sounds, But like you listen to Autobahn, the full version, which I think goes for about 12 minutes, and it's just, I don't know. I like it. Sorry.
It's
All
quantized.
All right, so we've been going for over an hour,
classic.
Braggy, so
right.
we need to
Okay.
sharpen up the remaining ones, I guess, without minimizing the impact. So I'm going to talk about Back in Black by AC/DC. And,
Monster.
there's not too many albums that starts off with a song like Hell's Bells, and all you've got is the bells toiling away. And I guess now the Panthers use that for when they run on the field. So there's
killer,
an influence. Yeah, if it wasn't for AC/DC Back in Black, maybe we wouldn't have had the Panthers. But to me, I think this was an influential album in so many ways because it was the first album after Bon Scott had passed away.
God, yep.
Brian Johnson, new vocalist, and to me, I think it was such an important album for AC/DC because they just had
Make or break.
Whack the ball out of the ballpark, and it was either going to be people
still
loved
going.
it. Yeah, absolutely. And you listen to the songs. You Shook Me All Night Long, Back in Black, Have a Drink on Me. What do you do for money, honey? Give the dog a bone. That's such a classic song. It's just
there's no bullshit on that album. It's all good.
Rock and roll ain't noise pollution. What a way to finish it, So commercially successful, iconic. Brian Johnson's unique voice that still had that remnants of, you could almost hear Bond, but it was different. And I still remember the little Andy cap that he used to wear, and and you could hardly see his eyes. He'd have it at such an angle, and people were just sitting here saying, "Oh my God," because it had to be good, otherwise they were gone. But they would never have got over the loss of Bond. But it became a real template for rock and roll.
Brian Johnson was still working as a tradie at the time.
Yeah.
And he had the problem where the bank would be leaning on him for his mortgage and stuff. And so when he joined AC/DC and finally got some coin, he's gone with cash and he's walked into the bank and he's thrown it on the desk and goes, "Don't fucking ring me ever fucking again." He's such a working guy. He's such a working class guy. And it took me a while to get him. I didn't, because Bon Scott was the bloke for us, right?
Yeah.
But when you go see him, he's so respectful. So he kind of understands the legacy of what he's got. And when he comes out here, he says, "I'm still the new bloke."
He's got so much respect for. I saw him in Brizzy, and he did a whole thing where he just paid respect to Bond.
I read somewhere that he does not sing "Highway to Hell" as a mark of respect to.
No, they don't do that. I don't think they do that.
No, that's right.
I remember exactly where I was when I first heard that. I was at my mate Darren Whittle's place, 7 fucking Tippett Street, or it might be 9. I can't remember the number, but I was there with him. We put it on. Fuck, just holy shit! I just love this.
Well, Highway to Hell before it was a step up too for them, to be honest.
Yeah.
You listen to Highway to Hell and it's like, "Hoi, what's going on here?" And I listened to that album the other day and gone, "Oh, gee, I like that record."
And so hard. I mean, there's so many AC/DC, tribute bands, and there's so many. I hear so many people play it. It's so hard to cover because
get that groove.
It swings, Rossi. It
does. Phil Rudd, man.
It almost swings, doesn't it? It's like, I don't know. I know it's only fractions of a second, but there's something about it.
Look, when I hear Thunderstruck, which had Chris Slade playing on it, as opposed to anything Phil Rudd's on, I could tell straight away. It's just metronomic, and Phil's got that.
Yeah. It's the role in the rock and roll or something. I don't know.
Yeah. And Cliff Williams as a bass player brought a lot to the table too. Because on the albums before that, it might have been George Young played a bit of bass, Mark Evans played a little bit of bass. They had all different people playing on them. And it wasn't until maybe about Power Age and Cliff joined that the lineup started to solidify. And the band got good. And then when Bond died, because the band was smoking, the band got good. And then when Brian came in, they just went to this whole other level. It was incredible.
It's also probably Malcolm's fucking right hand.
Cannot understate that. You can't.
It's just insane. Yeah. Anyway,
so Rossi,
my last album, because I shared one with Curly, and I think it's a good thing. My last album is a game changer again.
Yeah,
and it's and my advisor tells me that it was probably one of the last times, aside from when new metal came along, that a whole new genre turned up that we hadn't heard before. And for me, the record was Nevermind by Nirvana. You listen to that record, and I remember, I don't know, I reckon I might have listened to it 40 or 50 times almost in a row when I first got that record. I couldn't believe it. I could not believe the pop sensibility. See, he was a Beatles nut too, funnily enough. But the pop and the rock and the sound and the energy and the anger, and it had it all going on. And I suspect it may have launched a generation. And I suspect that it's still being felt even as far as 30 feet away from me as we speak.
It's true. I'll tell you what it did. It made fucking flannelette shirts cool again.
Well, that clip that Smells Like Teen Spirit was so good.
Man. I was kind of, I remember when it came out, I was kind of like, what the fuck? I didn't know if I liked it or not. I wasn't like you, Rossi, because I wasn't in that mode. But then it just grew. I'm thinking, holy shit, what's going on here? I better listen to this properly.
Yeah.
And
Come As You Are. What?
Come
As You Are.
No, What's the one? I'm so happy.
Happy. Go straight down.
No, not that one. Not that one. What's the one with all the chords in it?
All the chords.
Yeah, there's one.
Not-
But Butch Vig's production on it was incredible. The songs are great. The band has Dave Grohl plays okay on that too. Not that we like to talk about Dave Grohl these days because he's a bit on the nose.
Dave just fucking blows it, doesn't he? Just like when the drums come in.
So was this album the first time we sort of grunge alternative rock in the charts?
Yeah.
Boom!
Changed overnight. Well, all the bands I worked for became totally irrelevant within 6 months. I tell you, we didn't know what hit us. We didn't know what hit us.
Yeah. That's true. That's true.
Yeah, it did. It was like the tide changed and we didn't see it coming.
That's true.
Wow.
All of a sudden, AC/DC wasn't that cool.
Nah, that's right. But
Or
that
the
album
Angels wasn't that cool. It was like, this is fucking proper rock and roll now.
Yeah, and it was angry rock and roll. And it was energy, and it was youth-based rock and roll.
Yeah,
young blokes. That's why you got to. So for me,
you know what it was, Curly. You know what it's got? It's got the drop.
Yeah,
it's got the light and the shade from Sonic Youth. It's got the go quiet, and you know it's coming. You know it's coming. And
you just got to wait.
Talked about this so many times, Curly, haven't we? That's what it's got.
100%.
But that's one of those albums, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's a good choice. Very
good. Pivotal. And then the enduring story around, the Nirvana and, Courtney Love and,
it's sad too,
Yeah, it was just
undiagnosed depression.
Yeah. Mental illness and self-medication.
Yes.
Yeah.
And who
would know where they would be if Kurt hadn't chosen the path that he chose? So who knows?
There would have been some great pop songs written from Kurt.
Yeah.
The video, the footage of them playing live at the Paramount, if you get a chance to have a look at that footage of Nirvana live at the Paramount, is a band at the peak of their powers.
Yeah.
Like you watch it and you just go, oh, what do we got here? I just love it, And I love that it ebbs and flows and it changes. And sometimes I get it and sometimes I don't, but eventually I'll get it in the end,
Yeah. All righty, Braggy, your last one.
Last one is N.W.A. Don't want to say the first word without attitude. Straight out of Compton, 1989. I'll tell you why this is so significant, because the music that's been in the charts most in the last 20 years is gangster rap. Wouldn't you say?
Yeah.
And this is probably the first one, because before this, rap was like, I bought a hat. I went to the hat shop. It wasn't. Yeah. It didn't really.
Gangster rap.
And Dre comes along. It's 1989. These guys are straight out of LA, where the shit's going down. You got what's his name? The guy that got the police killed. It's around the same time as they beat that
Rodney
guy
King.
Rodney King.
Yeah.
And if you listen to the album, the first song was, straight out of Compton, and it's like a soundscape of what these guys were going through. There's fucking sirens, gunshots. There's police radio. That's all in there. And the samples there's so many James Brown samples.
Hey, we can't. Yeah,
you know what I'm saying? And then the second song is "Fuck the Police."
Yeah.
And now anyone writes a song, and then straight away the FBI open a file on them. That's rock and roll.
But that's also why I like Body Count as well. I'm not allowed, and like Body Count had the same sort of attitude, but with a metal style.
Yeah.
But still hip hop, right? Still outlaw, gangbangers, wow. But
and it opens, and then Dr. Dre becomes one of the most influential producers.
After
that.
Massive.
Yeah.
But that cross-pollination, the samples and the sounds, and their love of things like TRO 808 drum machines with that big resounding, resonant bottom end. I love that stuff, like it's not always for me, and I'm not the target audience, and it's not, and I and
no, not me either.
I was too old to be an angry guy who would be tied into that, right? I was angry for other reasons.
Well, you weren't black in a gang in LA either, mate.
I'm a white guy in Sydney. How bad could it be, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
But because the political impact of it and the cultural significance is massive. And that's what Little Richard brought. And that's what those guys brought.
Man, we go back to Little Richard. I think you win this freaking thing.
Yeah.
Little Richard.
It's the cultural significance of them all.
Right.
It's all the culture.
Oh, by the way, one thing I looked up about this, it was made for $12,000.
Yeah.
Wow,
good.
really?
Yeah.
So,
That's right.
There's a movie being made about this too, hasn't there?
Yes, I think
sure
so.
it has. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure I've watched the movie. Yeah.
I like that stuff.
Has Jack got anything to say about it?
It debuted at #1 on the Billboard R&B chart and reached #9 on the Billboard 200. So that's amazing. Debuted at #1 in the R&B chart. So
and that's 89. We're still in the 80s.
Yeah.
And once again, it's an album that just smacks you, all right, around the head, and
it says "fuck you."
Sort of grabs you by the ears and says, "There's something going on here." So,
but it was like a flag bearer for a whole movement in a way.
Well, there's no without this. There's no Eminem.
Nah, all of those guys.
50 Cent. I don't know who else those guys are.
Tupac.
I said it's not really our genre. Tupac.
Yep.
Yeah, all of that stuff. All of those sort of acts.
And it's still going on now. Like we said today, you listen to
it's the most popular. Like, it's what more young people listen to than rock and roll, I tell you.
Yeah, and now the girls are taking over.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the raunch culture and a whole lot of different stuff. But it's fascinating,
All right, so let's finish it with something a little less slap around the head. I'm going to talk about Appetite for Destruction, Guns and Roses. Now, once again, interesting album. Didn't immediately take off. I think it was, what year was it? 87?
87.
It didn't really sort of take off until I think, what was the song? Welcome to the Jungle. I think Paradise City.
Sweet Child of Mine was the hit, though.
Was the hit. So it wasn't until that. And I think that was second single, if I remember rightly. It's just iconic. I mean, I'm not a massive Guns N' Roses fan, but I certainly listened when Sweet Child of Mine came on, and watching, who's the lead singer again? What's his name?
Axl Rose.
Watching Axl on stage dance like a fucking
snake.
It was just, I'm just thinking, my God, where did these guys come from? It's iconic. He's got a unique vocal. There's grit in there.
It's got heroin danger in it too, right? The heroin danger.
Most dangerous.
The seedy side of the LA Strip, and long hair and guitars are coming back. I remember that album. It was just rock and roll. It was like, Motley Crue seemed like wuss bags by comparison to these guys.
It was a bit more. It was like it was less. There was less spandex.
Yep.
And the hair, there was still long hair, but it wasn't as bouffant. It wasn't as well tended.
But they were great. They were great lovers of the Angels and Rose Tattoo.
There you go.
And the roses in
that little bit of Aussie rock to it, doesn't
it? The roses in their title is because of Rose Tattoo.
Oh,
wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah, and
that's cool.
And they did a cover of Nice Boys Don't Play Rock and Roll by Rose Tattoo on the album before Appetite for Destruction. The live record. They did like a 6-minute version of it, and Mick Cox, the guitar player, was getting like $30,000 US per month when it blew up.
Wow.
For a song he'd written all those years earlier. Also, my mate Glenn Morris, who was in Kings of the Sun with Clifford Hode, they got booted off the Guns N' Roses tour because Clifford Hode came out in the press and said, I don't know why everyone thinks Guns N' Roses are the toughest band in the world. Everyone knows Rose Tattoo were. And they got dragged into the backstage area of Guns N' Roses. A mate of mine was TM, and the band were there, and they got like, it's the old story of, you know, when they used to bust someone out of the cavalry and they pull off their sword and break it over the knee and rip the stripes off, and they did the tour passes. Kings of the Sun went on stage. They got 2 lights, 4 boxes, thrown out the back door, off the tour, killed their career. And Axl goes on stage and says, I just want to apologize for having those F words on earlier on. We're so fucking sorry to have those fucking pieces of shit, blah, blah. There's audio footage of it. And that was them here in Australia. Because I was so cut.
He was right, though.
Yeah, he was. Truth's in offense. Poor old Cliff killed his career for telling the truth.
Would not fucking fuck with Rose Tattoo in a million years.
No. Love Rose Tattoo. And they would get Rose Tattoo to support them wherever possible. You know, like.
Angry's pretty crook at the moment, I hear.
Is he?
Yeah, he had a support slot. Rose Tattoo was supporting a band.
Yeah.
2 weekends ago, you know, at the Triffid, and they had to pull out because of health reasons. So
yeah. Oh, look, Angry as a man, hasn't looked after himself, and like he's not young, and everyone else in the band, the original lineup, are dead of cancer.
Shit.
Including Ian Ryland, who is in. Geordie Leach wasn't around. Ian Ryland, the bass player. Even Lobby Lloyd played bass in Rose Tattoo.
Who was the big guitarist? The big
Pete Wells. Wells.
What a guitar player! What a slide
player! Yeah, I did a tour when he was playing in a band called Heart Attack with Mick Cox, the other guitarist from Rose Tattoo. And Wellesley one night, he's sitting there, he's playing 52-13 on his Les Paul, right? And he's winding the strings off. And his last song is 13. He's winding the strings off, and then he walks off and he gives me the guitar with the strings flapping around like this. He goes, I'd have a look at that one tomorrow, Rossi, if I was you. It sounded a bit out at the end. I said, yeah, I was going to. Pete sounded a bit funny to me right near the end as well. But
52-13 on a Les Paul. That neck didn't break off.
Yeah. He was also the bass player. He was from Brisbane, Pete Wells. Right. He was the bass player in the famous Australian rock band Buffalo as well.
Wow.
Yeah.
All right. Guys, how did we get it? Great show. We've been going almost an hour and a half, so I'm going to wind her up here. So wherever you're listening to this or watching it, leave us your thoughts on what you would consider an influential album.
That'd be interesting to hear.
That would be interesting.
We'd love to hear it. We'd love to see it. And maybe we can share some of those comments on up and coming episodes. So I think we got 14 really good albums. And I'll just share something really funny. When Braggy first talked about influential albums, the first album that popped into my head was the soundtrack from War of the Worlds. Don't ask me why it popped up into my head.
Jeff Wayne. The chances of anything coming from Mars is 1,000,000 to 1, he said.
So I'm so glad
that record.
I'm so glad I didn't go down that path. But anyway, so if you've enjoyed the episode, please leave a review. We're on YouTube, Facebook, TikTok. We are going to have a series around influential albums, and it's on our website at Unfiltered, Undiscovered.com. I'll be sharing one a week. So check out the website, subscribe to it. Enjoy our playlist on Spotify. Just do a quick search for Unfiltered, Undiscovered. And every bit of music that we've ever talked about from the bands that come on and share their music with us is on that playlist. So that's about it. All I've got to say is, how good is vinyl records? Until next time, thanks, guys. We will see you all again next week. Bye for now.
Bye.
So.